So this is the final video over the evolutionary section. This part is called the family and evolutionary perspective. So we're wrapping up one of the domains with this. So I say this is perhaps more philosophical, but I say reality exists. We seek its continual existence. So we reproduce. This is the goal we all strive for, if we are striving properly at all, whether consciously or unconsciously. It is either that we seek its propagation across time, or that we seek its destruction. Or if we allow something to possess us, such as lust, which itself desires sex, and ultimately sexual reproduction, at least that's the point, or anger, which itself can desire the destruction of life, even that of the person being possessed. There are two fundamental evolutionary ways of acting in the world. Although the evolutionary way of acting in the world changes as things evolve. So it's not a constant. It changes with the environment and with the culture. And it changes like how the human genes change, and it might even change in correlation to that. There is the way, or ways, in which one acts, which leads to them reproducing, being accepted by at least one member of the opposite sex, or many. And the ways in which one acts, which leads them to not reproducing, being rejected by all members of the opposite sex, which will essentially never happen for the vast majority of women. So this primarily applies to men. So this is a real threat to men, because for men, there is a way in which they could act, and maybe multiple men act this way, where a woman's just never going to accept them as being worthy of having their genes propagated into the future, right? And so that's a real problem for men. And so men have to act properly, or at least properly enough, in order to be accepted, be able to reproduce, and be able to become a good father and continue the family pattern for generations to come. That way of being for the man is to become helpful. It is to become the man that the woman would want as her husband and as the father of her children. It's to become the man who she thinks can and will assist him during her time or times of need. It's to become the man who she can rely on when she needs someone to rely on, which may be quite often. The evolutionary way for men is to grow and adapt to your environment, material, social, economic, etc., and to become useful to your society. It's to become the man a woman wants and needs, and to become the reproductively successful son. That way of being for women is to demand more from the men around her, to not set the bar too low, but to set it high, higher perhaps than anyone she knows, to seek the best that she can manage, not out of arrogance, but because young men need to learn to adopt as much responsibility as they can and to be their best. That's what evolution demands. It demands that you be your best. At least if you are your best, then people reject your best, and you know you couldn't have done better. But when people reject something less than your best, then there's always the possibility that you could have been accepted if you had done better, if you had only done better. Women collectively should demand much from men, and perhaps men should demand much from women, but especially women demanding from men. The way that women become the reproductively successful daughter is by getting the best man she can to care for her during her time or times of need. It's in this way that the reproductively successful daughter and the reproductively successful son join sexually, at least in the biological sense, and produce a child. They become the mother and father of the child. The child is some combination of them, genetically speaking. The child's parents are also combinations of their parents. The child's parents are also a combination of their parents, so that the child's grandparents, and so on and back to the first cell with genetic material. It's in this regard that we are all culminations of our evolutionary history, and so the pattern of the family, evolutionarily, continues in this way. For as long as consciousness exists, the beauty of being is brought forth out of the material world, and we maintain consciousness Only through the act of human reproduction reality exists. Therefore, we should choose to continue its existence. How arrogant of us to reject the cosmos' fundamental principle. And then the last part's kind of a joke. It's so go reproduce. And I actually have the last thing probably. I have a last thing to say about this, and maybe I'll actually say more because it's only been 5 minutes. There's a strange thing. So I've actually been thinking about these ideas probably for a year, maybe longer than them. Like last August, so August 2025, at the very beginning of August, I began questioning, the idea that adultery is wrong, right? And I've been questioning that, and one of the first things that I sort of thought of whenever I was thinking about this was how, like parents or teachers will say, like they'll say don't have sex, and that's just stupid, right? That I know that's funny, but like that's just stupid. It's a stupid way of phrasing it. It's an oversimplification, and it just has nothing to it. Look, you cannot tell a teenager to just not have sex. That isn't going to work. Firstly, they have that desire, and that desire is strong as teenagers, and it needs to be, because evolutionarily, in our evolutionary history, we weren't as stable and civilized as we are now. And so human beings needed to reproduce as soon as they could reproduce in order to have the highest chance of human survival, right? But now that doesn't matter as much. Now we still need to do it early on. Like I think the limit for women is 30. Women shouldn't have children after 30. There's more problems associated with having kids after 30. And so they need to do that in their 20s. And so that's several years after they can. I think maybe it's like 14 or something whenever men and women become capable of doing that. Maybe it's more. I actually think it might be 11 now, and it's actually shorter now, and there's reasons for that. Or it happens earlier on now, and that's actually a bad thing, and there's reasons for that, but I'm not going to get into that. But it's stupid, right? Because sex, when it's done properly, is done between two people who are wholly committed to each other for life. And when it's done in that way, not only is it something that you should not only is it not something you shouldn't do, but it's something you most definitely should do. And so I think it's stupid. I think it's stupid to say to a teenager, male or female, don't have sex. That's stupid. It's a stupid idea. What should be said instead is something like, when you become competent enough, and when you fully commit yourself to someone, then you can enact one of the most sacred acts that you could ever do. Maybe the most sacred act you could ever do. It's only whenever you have made yourself into a competent enough individual and you have made a lifelong commitment to another person of the opposite sex, then and only then and only then can you and are you not only morally allowed, but morally obligated to partake in one of the most sacred acts, or the most sacred act that mankind was blessed with, if you want to phrase it like that. And that's way better. That's way better phrasing. And maybe whenever someone says don't have sex, that is what they mean, but they aren't saying that, and that's a problem, because they should be saying that. They need to say that. So that's what we should be telling our young people. It isn't don't have sex. Sex is stupid. Oh, look at all these things that could go wrong. Look at all these diseases you can get. You're going to try and scare people into not having sex? That's your goal. Really? Well, it's not going to work. And even if it does work, it's not going to be a good thing if it works. And maybe if they don't have sex, then they'll find the alternative. Maybe they'll watch pornography instead and masturbate. And so Maybe it's not all sunshine and rainbows just because you say don't have sex. I don't think it works. I think it should stop, and I think it should be phrased better and as I phrased it, or something along those lines. And so, again, just to end this off, I need to make the point that from an evolutionary perspective, the most meaningful, significant, and important thing you could possibly do with your life is to grow and develop as a child and young adolescent. Make yourself into someone competent and capable of taking care of children. Make yourself attractive to members of the opposite sex. Choose the best that you can. Choose someone as equally incompetent and stupid and flawed as you are. Make a lifelong commitment to that person. Have children and raise them properly, and then raise your grandchildren properly. And that's the meaning of life.